Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and greeting to the all panel and the spectator who joined us in the forum today. With me, Muhammad Luqman bin Muhammad, as your moderator on the forum today. Our forum today is titled UDHR and ICCPR, their impact on the implementation. Next, I will introduce the panel who will give their opinion and views on the topic for our forum today. Our first panel is the Dean of the Faculty of Law and International Relations of UNIZA, namely Prof. Muhammad Aliff bin Emransyah. Our second panel is Dr. Muhammad Haziq Aiman bin Rohani, who is the Deputy Dean of the Law and International Relations Faculty of UNIZA. Our next panel is Dr. Muhammad Hakim bin Shaharuddin, who is a lecturer for UNIZA Faculty of Law and International Relations. And our last panel is Dr. Muhammad Husairi bin Khalid, who is also a lecturer for UNIZA Faculty of Law and International Relations. Before we hear the argument from our panel today, I will explain a little bit first what exactly the UDHR and ICCPR are. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights, UDHR, is an important document in the history of human rights. This is because it has established that human rights are universally protected and has been translated into 500 languages. On 10 December 1948 in Paris, this declaration was promulgated by the General Assembly of the United Nations. As the UDHR is widely recognized by the various parties, it has made more than 70 human rights treaties accepted and used on regular basis globally and regionally. For the United Nations International Covenant and on Civil and Political Rights, ICCPR, is a covenant that seeks to ensure the protection of civil and political rights. On 19 December 1966, it was adopted by the General Assembly of the United Nations, and on 20 March 1976, it came into force. States that have ratified the covenant are ready to protect the preserved human rights and are compelled to take administrative, judicial and legal measures to protect the rights enshrined in the treaty and to provide effective remedies. It is therefore understandable that the UDHR as well as the ICCPR is a document and agreement to protect human rights universally and comprehensively. There's a little bit of definition of meaning of the UDHR and also the ICCPR. Next, I will ask the first question to our first panel today, which is Prof. Aliff. The question is how the Organization of the Islamic Cooperation (OIC) reacts to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights (UDHR) and the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights (ICCPR).
Thank you for the question, Sir Moderator. As we know, the UDHR and ICCPR both established in the 19th century. The organization focused on improving human rights, especially on civil matters. OIC see this a very pitchy things in the world after the end of World War II. However, the content of the rules are to liberalism and capitalism that is clearly opposite the Muslim Sharia. Islam is the way of life and need to be implemented in both religion and lives. The laws are too universal. There are scholars of intellect from Pakistan and Egypt to urge Muslim countries to choose Islam as the framework for governance because Islam should put first. The OIC come with a new, that is Cairo Declaration, which is Sharia law were manifested in human rights and the way of Islam too. The declaration was not agreed by the United Nations because it violated the international law. The OIC needs to focus on the implementation to Islamic states instead of globalization the treaty. But how to implement international law in the global arena? They need to strengthen the freedom of association by increasing the broad to international level. So the committee cannot disagree as the law gives freedom to all. Next, the OIC also needs to revise the declaration. Lastly, engage the organization that handles the protection of human rights so they will investigate the declaration will be accepted. So that's all for my answer. Thank you.
Thank you to Prof. Aliff for the answer given just now. Now we move on the second question. What will happen if there is no implementation of UDHR and ICCPR in today's world? And this question is to the second panel, Dr. Haziq Aiman.
Thank you, Mr. Luqman, for your great question. Well, for me, if you look at the success of the implementation of UDHR and ICCPR, where we managed to articulate fundamental rights and freedoms for all people, it also declares that human rights are universal, that they should be enjoyed by everyone, regardless of who they are or where they live. UDHR also includes civil and political rights, such as the right to life, liberty, free expression, and privacy are also included. In addition, it also covers economic, social, and cultural rights, such as the to rights to social security, healthcare, and education. In short, it serves as both a guide for current action and an evolving set of ideas for future national implementation. The principles of the UDHR are increasingly being embedded in what states do, and it serves as the foundation for the International Bill of Rights and several other important human rights agreements. We are living in a time where people demand for their rights for a prosperous and fair life. So without this implementation, it must be hard for the government and ourselves as a human being to make a good living. Further, the Universal Declaration has given rise to a range of other international agreements which are legally binding on the countries that ratify them, including the ICCPR. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you for the argument given just now by Dr. Aiman. The next question is for our third panel, which is Dr. Hakim. Can you explain the challenges of human rights and cultural diversity in UDHR and ICCPR?
Thank you, moderator. The resulting merger of peoples and cultures is an increasingly global, multicultural world filled with tension, confusion, and conflict, which raises new challenges to the ongoing pursuit of universal human rights. Cultural background is one of the primary sources of identity. Everyone has a right to culture, including the right to enjoy and develop cultural life and identity, but it is not unlimited. The right to culture is limited at the point at which it infringes on another human right. No right can be used at the expense or destruction of another in accordance with international law. This means that cultural rights cannot be invoked or interpreted in such a way as to justify any act leading to the denial or violation of other human rights and fundamental freedoms. As such, claiming cultural relativism as an excuse to violate or deny human rights is an abuse of the right to culture. We often hear that Islamization enjoys overwhelming popular support in Islamic countries and that Sharia and its principles provide solidarity and socio-political motivation to Muslims who demand the immediate application of historical Sharia. A majority of population in many Islamic countries reject the liberal approach of the UDHR that emphasizes political and civil and not economic and national rights. This argument urges recognition of the internal cultural values. While it is clear that the language of international human rights instruments generally supports the theory of universalism, present state practice hard supports any suggestion that in adopting or ratifying international human rights instruments, non-Western state parties were indicating an acceptance of a strict and exclusive Western perspective or interpretation of international human rights norms. It is indeed uncontroversial that universal human rights need to be given more specific interpretation depending on the local and national context and traditions. However, there is considerable disagreement on whether the very idea of human rights and the list of the recognized human rights can themselves be permitted to vary according to local cultures and practice. Beyond this, the political form of the solidarity requires actually hearing from others at a distance about their concern and interests, and requires taking their views seriously into consideration. It is likely that in order to facilitate the input by other nation states in forming globally applicable human rights, new form of transnational representation in the institution of global governance will be needed to construct. This kind of agreement could emerge on the basis of open dialogue and intercultural respect, such that the understandings of the norms will lose much of their one-sided character and will be responsive to the new networks of interrelations in contemporary globalization. That's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hakim, for the information given just now. Next up is the question for our last panel, which is Dr. Husairi.
Thank you, Mr. Luqman. Regarding the question, which is what steps lie ahead for UDHR and ICCPR? Firstly, is about the uncertainty that exists with respect to internally displaced person. They are individuals who cannot live in their usual home as there was a conflict that happened, yet have not crossed a world border. The internally displaced person known as IDP have been confronted with horrendous and dangerous living conditions on their land. The issue came up when the conflict arose on their land. The international law had no authority towards them until they left the place. And the second area of controversy focuses on how best to resolve large-scale civil conflict. Still, another area of concern involves apologies and reparation for previous human rights injustice. Past violence against large number of people can worsen relations between governments and communities. Thus, the whole area is fraught with political difficulty, regardless of its importance to human rights in general. Unchallenged economic power leaves large group of individuals severely disadvantaged and places their other rights in danger. As income inequality increase, so does violence within the sort of arbitrary detention, torture, political imprisonment, and disappearance. There is an immediate link between poverty and social exclusion more generally. In order to avoid an overall decline in rights, governments must stimulously develop political and economically inclusive policy and institution. As it now stands, in much of the world, economic rights have not been accorded with sufficient attention. And that's all for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sairi, for the opinion and information presented just now. With the end of the explanation from all our panel today and our forum today. Thank you to the all panel for the thoughtful explanation given just now. Not forgetting also to the audience who are together in our forum today. We end our forum today with the word wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you.
Oh,